Surely you can't be serious. I am serious. And don't call me Shirley. One exchange. And with it, Airplane rewired an entire generation's relationship with comedy. What looked from the outside like a standard disaster movie was in reality the most precisely engineered joke delivery machine Hollywood had ever built. Today, 15 facts about Airplane. From the $2,500 bargain that made the whole thing legal, to a Broadway legend sedated mid-song in a military ward, to the audience that unknowingly edited the film. Stick around for the bonus. It involves Universal Pictures, a team of lawyers, and the reason half the world never saw a film called Airplane at all. Paramount released Airplane in 1980. It grossed over $171 million worldwide, starring Robert Hayes, Julie Haggerty, Lloyd Bridges, Robert Stack, Peter Graves, and Leslie Nielsen, none of whom were hired to be funny. That was the entire point. Behind the deadpan one-liners, the background gags you missed the first 3 times, and the punchlines that didn't stop long enough to let you breathe, was a production story almost as ridiculous as the film itself. Fact 1. The film exists because somebody forgot to turn off the VCR. Zaz, Jim Abrahams, and Jerry and David Zucker had a habit they called fishing for bits, leaving a VCR running overnight to capture late-night programming for their stage show Kentucky Fried Theater. One night, the tape grabbed a dead-serious 1957 disaster film called 0 Hour. A traumatized war veteran has to land a passenger plane after the crew gets food poisoning. Every line delivered with total sincerity, every dramatic beat begging for a punchline. They used 0 Hour's structure as a blueprint and built jokes directly into the existing framework. Then it became clear this wasn't a parody anymore. This was a remake. That meant lawyers. So Zaz tracked down the owners of 0 Hour and bought the official remake rights for $2,500. That payment became a legal force field. Airplane went on to gross $171 million, the best bargain in Hollywood history. Fact 2. The casting gamble that made the whole thing work. The studio wanted a big comedy name, Chevy Chase, Bill Murray. Zaz said absolutely not. Bruce Jenner read for the role. David Letterman screen-tested and was liked enough for a callback, then decided the part wasn't for him. The studio pushed Barry Manilow. Zaz wanted no part of him. A sympathetic executive reportedly called Manilow directly and talked him out of it on Zaz's behalf. Then they found Robert Hayes, earnest, slightly nervous, capable of delivering complete nonsense with total conviction, and a licensed pilot. For Elaine, Sigourney Weaver considered the role and passed. Shelley Long circled it. Then Julie Haggerty walked in. One audition, role locked. Fact 3. Leslie Nielsen and the fart machine that took over his life. Nielsen discovered a small handheld noisemaker on set and never looked back. He would deploy it mid-conversation and continue speaking like nothing had happened, leaving cast and crew scrambling not to break. He eventually started selling them to the crew for $7 each. The assistant director banned them from set. Nielsen ignored this completely. He took the act everywhere. Press junkets, dinner parties, the White House, first-class flights, virtually every talk show he ever appeared on. Always the same move. Straight face, zero acknowledgement, total commitment. His tombstone reads, "Let her rip." He left specific instructions to make sure it stayed that way. Fact 4. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar negotiated his fee around a rug. Zaz offered Kareem $30,000. His agent came back asking for $35,000, the exact price of an oriental rug Kareem wanted to buy. Not a bargaining tactic, a literal rug. Zaz agreed, half amused. A few weeks later, a Time magazine article ran a photo of Kareem standing in front of the rug he had already purchased with their money. He got the role. He got the last word on defense. He got the rug. Fact 5. The film packed roughly 260 jokes into 88 minutes, 3 per minute. Zaz's philosophy: keep the audience laughing so relentlessly that nobody has time to question how insane the story is. The solution was layering. While one joke lands in the foreground, something ridiculous is already happening in the background. Hidden throughout, the engine sound under every aerial shot is not a jet. It's the rhythmic chug of a propeller aircraft, lifted directly from 0 Hour. Your eyes see a modern jetliner. Your ears hear 1957. Aviation buffs eventually caught it. Once you hear it, you cannot unhear it. Fact 6. Ethel Merman's final film role was getting sedated mid-song. The setup: Ted Stryker walks through a military ward, and a doctor explains a patient in the corner has severe shell shock. He thinks he's Ethel Merman. Then Ethel Merman sits up and proves him right. The real Ethel Merman, one of the most powerful voices in Broadway history, immediately belts out "Everything's Coming Up Roses" from Gypsy. An orderly rushes in and sedates her mid-song. The joke works because Merman agreed to play it completely straight. This was her final film role. She died in 1984. Airplane was her last on-screen appearance. A Broadway legend in a military hospital ward, knocked unconscious mid-note. Fact 7. Nobody was allowed to act like they were in a comedy. Zaz gave every cast member one instruction: play every scene like you're in a deadly serious thriller. Robert Stack initially played his role flat and monotone, missing the tone. Zaz's solution: they showed him a tape of comedian John Byner doing an impression of Robert Stack. What they wanted was Stack doing Byner doing Stack. 3 layers of deadpan seriousness. Stack understood immediately. Peter Graves called the script the most disgusting piece of trash he'd ever read and nearly walked. Zaz assured him his more uncomfortable lines would be explained later in a scene he wasn't in. There was no such scene. They never told him that. Fact 8. The score was played completely straight by a legend. Zaz hired Elmer Bernstein, composer of The Magnificent Seven and To Kill a Mockingbird, and gave him one brief: not a brilliant score. A B-movie score. Overdone, corny, the musical equivalent of a disaster film that takes itself too seriously. Bernstein had perfected this approach on Animal House 2 years earlier. For Airplane, he applied the same method: lush strings, dramatic bass, ominous chords, every tense musical cue designed to make the audience feel real danger, right up until the punchline arrived and pulled the rug out entirely. The music says this is serious. The screen shows a rubber autopilot. Somehow both things are true at the same time. A $2,500 legal maneuver that made $171 million possible. A fart machine that followed its owner to the White House. And Ethel Merman's final performance. Sedated mid-song in a military ward. We're not halfway through. Still coming. The TV mom who spent 17 years barely working until one flight revived everything. The audience that edited the film without knowing it. And the bonus? Universal Pictures, a team of lawyers, and the reason half the world never saw this film called Airplane at all. Fact 9. Barbara Billingsley spent 17 years waiting for this scene. After Leave It to Beaver ended in 1963, Billingsley found herself locked into an image impossible to escape. Sweet, proper, perfect pearls. Offers slowed to almost nothing. She went 17 years with barely a credit to her name. Then, Airplane. Needed someone to translate dense jive slang for confused passengers. And the joke only worked with the most wholesome person imaginable. Harriet Nelson passed. The door opened for Billingsley. Her dialogue was listed simply as "Talks Jive." She called it the craziest script she'd ever read and signed on immediately. The actors who played the jive-speaking passengers coached her personally. The result destroyed test audiences, America's most proper TV mom calmly translating, "Just hang loose blood for a bewildered flight attendant." She said it herself. "It started my whole career again." Fact 10. The airport announcement was performed by a real married couple, arguing. The white zone gag starts as 2 calm voices repeating a familiar airport warning. Then they begin arguing. A full-blown personal dispute delivered with the same flat professionalism normally reserved for baggage claim updates. ZAZ auditioned professional voice actors and couldn't find anyone who sounded authentic enough, so they hired the actual couple who had recorded the genuine PA announcement tapes currently in use at LAX. The couple playing a bickering married couple over the airport intercom were, in real life, a married couple. You will never hear a gate announcement the same way again. Fact 11. Zaz had 2 weeks to prove they could direct. Zaz had never directed a feature film. Paramount placed a formal clause in the contract. They could be fired after 2 weeks if the footage wasn't landing. They said sure. Then, the studio started seeing the footage. Dead serious actors selling ridiculous lines, razor-sharp pacing, a comedic style unlike anything else in theaters. Nobody said another word about replacing anybody. 3 first-time directors from Wisconsin walked into that 2-week window with everything to prove. They came out the other side having changed comedy. Fact 12. The Directors Guild wouldn't let 3 people direct one film. The DGA's preference: 1 film, 1 director. Zaz wrote together, built jokes together, approached every creative decision as a single unit. They formally submitted a request for a shared pseudonym, Abrahams and Zuckers, one imaginary human made of 3 real ones. The Guild said no. They planned to list just Jerry Zucker alone as director, with the others quietly running things behind the scenes. Then the Guild's executive board granted a formal waiver, and the workaround became unnecessary. When Airplane hit theaters, the credit read exactly the way the team always worked. The Coens, the Wachowskis, the Farrellys, they all followed with their own collaborative partnerships. 3 guys who refused to take turns quietly helped normalize the idea that directing doesn't have to be a solo act. Fact 13. The bean dip scene took out one of its own cast members. The effects team loaded an air-powered mortar with real bean dip, chosen for its thick, chunky consistency. On the first take, the mortar didn't hit the fan. It fired directly into Steven Stucker, covering him in bean dip. His reaction was not acting. They cleaned up the set. They cleaned up the actor. The subsequent take worked exactly as intended. Presiding over the whole thing, executive producer Howard W. Koch, former president of the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences from 1977 to 1979. The man who had spent 2 years overseeing Hollywood's most prestigious organization personally supervised the gag where something unpleasant hits a fan and took out one of his own cast members in rehearsal. Fact 14. The film was edited by audiences who didn't know they were editing it. The rough cut ran 115 minutes, nearly half an hour longer than the final film. Preview audiences greeted it with near total silence. For a comedy built on rapid-fire punchlines, dead air is not an option. Zaz took the film on tour to college campuses and movie theaters and handed the editing decisions to the audience. Every screening was a live laboratory. They watched the crowd, not the screen. Big laugh. That joke stays. Quiet room, gone. 27 minutes hit the cutting room floor. What survived was a lean, relentless 88-minute comedy where the next joke was already landing before you'd finished laughing at the last one. That rhythm didn't happen in an editing suite. It happened in college auditoriums across America, engineered by audiences who didn't even know they were cutting a film. Fact 15. Universal tried to ground the film before it ever took off. Universal had spent a decade building a disaster movie empire. Airport 1975, Airport 77, The Concorde. When Paramount announced Airplane, a direct parody of everything Universal had built, Universal filed a formal complaint with the MPAA. The arbitration board ruled in Universal's favor. Internationally, the film couldn't be called Airplane at all. British and Australian markets received it as Flying High. Universal also blocked Zaz from casting Helen Reddy, the singing nun from Airport 1975, in a direct parody of her role. The part went to Maureen McGovern instead, who had sung the theme songs to The Poseidon Adventure and The Towering Inferno. When Airplane became a massive hit, Universal quietly dropped the fight. Suing the most successful comedy of the year would have made them look exactly like the humorless institution the movie was already lampooning. And now, the bonus I've been saving for last. Vincent Price turned down the role of Dr. Rumack, the part that Leslie Nielsen made legendary. Christopher Lee and Jack Webb also passed. Years later, Vincent Price called turning down Airplane his greatest career regret. Think about what that means. A man who had spent decades as the defining face of American horror cinema, who had played every conceivable variation of the sinister and the terrifying, looked back across his entire career and said the thing he most regretted was saying no to a comedy about bad fish and a rubber autopilot. Price had built an empire on committing completely to absurd premises with total seriousness. He had been doing exactly that in horror films for 30 years. Airplane was just horror with the tension replaced by punchlines. The instrument was identical, only the genre had changed. He knew that. He passed anyway, and spent the rest of his life knowing exactly what he had walked away from. Leslie Nielsen got the role, discovered the fart machine, and never looked back. Price got to spend the rest of his career thinking about what Rumack could have been. Sometimes the greatest regret isn't what you did. It's the role you put down and walked away from, and thought about on every flight afterward.